Okay, as we're currently reading Chapter 3 in our Introduction to Sociology text, I wanted to mention some of the case studies you're going to see this week as you read the chapter. Actually, quite a few. There are 5 of these this week, which is a lot. Typically, we see 2 or 3. So the first of these is questioning whether music is a cultural universal. This picks up on the theme in the chapter about what a cultural universal what it is and whether it indeed exists. So in the case of music, the question becomes, is it universal in all cultures? Is it something we see? If not, what does that suggest about the idea of something having a universal appeal or not? The second case study is overcoming culture shock. Culture shock is a feeling sometimes that you get when you travel to another culture, and sociologists and social scientists in general talk about opportunities to engage with culture shock as a way of informing yourself about the world, but then overcoming it at some level, particularly if it leads you to prejudice or xenophobia or ethnocentrism. The third example of a case study in this chapter is a breaching experiment. A breaching experiment is basically you engage in an everyday social setting and you try to disrupt that setting as a way of understanding something useful about the social norms or expectations in that setting. A great example of this is the character Borat of Sacha Baron Cohen, where he used to be able to do this when he became famous. He couldn't do this as much, but he would go into a social setting and he would do something really rude or disgusting as a way of eliciting an understanding again of how people expect others to behave in a particular social setting. So we call this a breaching experiment. The fourth case study is questioning whether the United States is bilingual, and there's a lot of interest, I think, in looking at the United States and its language connections to forms of culture, and this is an opportunity to engage in that discussion. And the last is a case study on the evolution of American hipster subcultures. Hipsters are very controversial in American subculture or American society, so it's an opportunity to use this case study to think about, indeed, is a hipster a definable subculture? If so, why has there been so much loathing of hipsters in the last 5 or so years in American society? Now, in addition to these cases, I want to throw out another one, and I'll give you Herbert Gann's, his famous case study, as a PDF on our Canvas site. And this is the issue of the high-low culture debate. So people often have a perception that there's high culture out there. So if it's music, it's Brahms, Beethoven, Chopin. If it's low culture, it's a form of hip-hop music, it's a form of pop music, it's a form of consumerist music that is just for your listening pleasure but doesn't have any depth to it. One of the things sociologists want to do, and in particular in this book by Herbert Gans, if you take a look at it, he wants to challenge that distinction and say that actually it's very elitist. And what is considered a high culture versus a low culture is something that's very subjective, political. Indeed, it's a cultural construct, and it's not necessarily a truth that we could consider. So as you engage with these case studies in Introduction to Sociology, Chapter 3 this week, I think you have great opportunities to really think about the pop culture worlds around you. So engage with those and understand them in more critical senses as you read the chapter and as you go through these case studies.